Let's go over here and see what you guys are talking or asking me about. The thing about predicting your own future. There's a fine science with this. There's a lot of psychics out there who they get tarot cards and they try to read themselves, and having intuition about things in your life is one thing. I have a great intuition about my life and I go with the flow of my life. My intuition guides me. It propels me. It pulls me. But do I know what's going to happen in my life exactly or specifically in the next year or two? Hell no, because I have an invested interest. And whenever it comes to sensing the future, the hardest future to sense is your own because you care about the outcome. As long as you care about the outcome and have an invested interest, it will get in the way of your sensing ability. It will basically direct you or pull you towards what you want to hear, what you want to see, what you want to feel versus what is actually coming your way. So it's harder to sense your own future, even if you're a psychic and you're an incredible psychic. It's hard to sense your own future because you have an invested interest. So you will not see things accurately or precisely because you do not have enough of an objective mind to be able to do so. The next level of that is family and friends. I can sense the future of my family and friends, but only to a certain degree, meaning that I don't really get to see everything the way that I would see with a client. When I'm tuning in with a client, I don't have an invested interest. I don't have, they're, in my mind, they're a stranger. They're someone that I don't have an invested interest of how it's going to turn out. And so because I don't technically care about what's going to happen, then at that point, I am allowing myself to be honest with myself, to be honest with that person. So this is why I always tell people, like, if you want me to be a psychic for you, don't become a friend, because the more of a friend you become, the less accurate I'm going to be with your readings. It's just not going to be possible because I lose my objectivity and I want a future for you that may not line up with what I'm actually going to sense. And so I'm going to fight myself in that. So you reading yourself is pretty much just not really the best thing, and you don't expect yourself to be very accurate. You might sense a few things intuitively, but you're not going to be accurate. Sensing family and friends, a little bit better, a little bit easier, still not going to be as accurate. Sensing strangers or people that you don't have an invested interest in, you'll get the best results that way. So there's 3 levels of it. There's 3 layers of it. I mean, you ask my sister, she gets upset because, I can read for her in some ways when I'm like tuning into a specific question, but there's a lot of things that she's like, I wish you could read me better. I wish you could read me, because I don't see as much for her as I see for a stranger. And so she has to go to she's tried to go to other psychics. She's not found one that she's happy with just because she knows my level of it. And so she's like, no, why can't you read me? So that's funny. But yeah, I mean, we already know, like, it's just not going to be as good as like me reading a stranger because I don't have an invested interest in their outcome. So that won't affect my ability to sense things in a certain way. That's pretty much, I know a lot of people want to be my friend. I was like, no, like, I have enough people in my life. But I always tell people, like, to people that you have psychics and people. I've had people come to me and they're like, I'm psychic. I'm very psychic and I'm intuitive and I know my future and I've been right every single time, but I just came to you for validation. I'm like, you don't need, and in my head, I'm like, bitch, you don't need validation if you can read your own future. Why are you wasting your time and your money on me? Why don't you put a bet on something that you can win money on if you know your future so well? Like, it's not, I'm sorry, sweetheart, but you're just talking yourself up and it ain't true. So no, you don't see your own future. You need me to tell you what you want to hear because you're believing something about your future that you want to happen and you want me to validate that. And if I don't tell you that, then you're going to say, I'm the one that's wrong. I'm not really psychic. I'm not really tuning in to your future. I don't know. You're the one that knows. And then you want to make it about yourself. It ain't about you. It's about me and what I'm sensing because you came to me for the answers. So you'll run into that. So people who are psychic, who deal with the industry, you will have people who think that they know their own future. I can see my own future. I'm always right. Okay, then why are you wasting your time? Why are you wasting your money? Why are you wasting your breath? Just get on with your life then and just stop being there. Stop being there, So no, it don't work that way. And so people who say that, who they claim that they're psychic with their own lives, that's BS. It doesn't work that way. Because I already know by default through experience that the level of objectivity, the layer of objectivity required to do your own reading is not present, is not available, is not going to happen. So that doesn't mean we don't sense things about our own future. We definitely sense things about our own future. It's just not going to be on a level of like me doing a reading for a client. Not going to be on that level. It just won't be. So thank you, Xtina. I appreciate that. Yeah, I love it's funny because when I was I had a, I've always had a lot of friends and I've always had a lot of people to call friends. But in time and over time, I've learned to pull back my energy and focus on just like a very small circle around me, just because it's so exhausting to be there for everybody, and it's hard to be there for everybody on a regular basis. And I have enough on my plate, so it's like, so it's just it gets a little harder when you try to be there for everybody else. Hmm. Vogue article on you who inspires you. Oh, another question for my Vogue article on you. Who inspires you? Well, what's the question? What's the question? I didn't see the question. What's the other question? Um, that's funny. That's cool. Um, Waiting to see the question. I want to wait to see the question. I want to see the question. That's funny. Another, and you know what's something that's because I'm prepping myself for to be on Instagram, not to be on Instagram, because I do Instagram lives and I do Facebook and Twitter and everything like that. But I'm trying to get my butt over into TikTok, and like I said, I've gotten up to 600 followers more or less. I'm trying to get to that 1,000 mark so I can start doing lives on there. But I go onto TikTok sometimes. It's funny because I didn't think I was gonna like TikTok because it felt like, oh my god, a new technology, a new app. Like I have to learn. I feel old because it feels like everything happens so quickly and they just do these things as if it's all intuitive, as if it's supposed to be like an automatic know how to do this. And then once I get on TikTok, I'm like, I don't know how to do this. So I had to learn all these things. And once you learn, it's like, oh yeah, I got this down. I got this down. But one thing that I noticed is a lot of people who are calling themselves psychics or mediums, and all they're doing is getting on there, $1 question, $1 question, and they either have like their rods or they have like a little like spinny thing or whatever. And they're like, okay, what's your question? What's your question? Are you and Tony gonna get back together? Spin. No. Okay, next question. I'm like, how are you psychic? How are you psychic? Like any person can do that. How were you psychic when you just did that? That's not using your psychic ability. Psychic ability is actually using the power of your brain and of your mind. That's just you. That's just a divination process, but it has nothing to do with your brain or your mind. You're not using your brain or your mind. So you have a lot of people who have this belief that being psychic means being able to know the future using a tool, but the tool is the source of the answer, and it's not. The tool should maybe assist you in the process. This was oracle cards, tarot cards. It's like they use these as divination tools, but they're not actually utilizing the tool properly. And I know people who are tarot readers who they spent years studying tarot. Like they can go into depth about every single angle and aspect of that, and they will apply it to your life in a way that is consistent and is accurate. Mitch is one of them. My friend Mitch is one of them. Mitchell Osborne. But then you got people who like all they do is just, hey, I pulled a card. I'm going to read the meaning and tell you what it means. That's not being psychic. That's just pulling a card and reading the meaning of the card and telling the person what that means. That's all that is. And that's not being psychic. So now if you pull the card and you allow the card to tell you a story, to tell you something, it's going to tell you something if you focus it on the intent of knowing what it is connected to with that person. The problem is most people are really lazy and they don't want to develop their abilities. They just want to be like flip a switch and be psychic. And I'm like, no, never going to happen. Like you're not going to develop your psychic ability by twisting caps on a bottle or by divination. You won't develop a maximum psychic ability with divination tools. You might get good at being more sensitive or psychic, but you're not going to get to the maximum level. You have to focus on using the brain. The brain is the tool. That is the mechanism that operates the psychic part of you, not the tool. The tool is just a way to get there, but it's not a way to get the answer or to sense the future. It's not going to tell you nothing about that. So it was kind of irritating to me because I keep seeing more and more, and you got these folks and they're just like, Alan, are you going to get back with Carol? Ooh, nope, sorry. June, are you going to get pregnant by May? Nope, nope. I'm like, how are you being psychic? That's not working. Sorry. And I know people say, well, like if you're using like the rods, like they're technically them themselves are. Some people say, oh, it's the rods. They're moving by themselves, and I'm like, no, fool. Like the person's moving the rods. And technically, you could say, well, the part of them that is being psychic might be slightly maneuvering the rods and giving them the answer. You could say that. That still is not an impressive form of psychic ability. It's just someone playing with rods and saying yes or no to things. I want details. I want to know what that person is sensing about the situation. I don't just want a yes or no. And the other part of that, which is what I've told people about psychic ability, is when you ask a psychic a yes or no question, you trigger the activation of their ego. Because as soon as you put the psychic on the spot and you ask them yes or no, you're basically telling them you're either allowed to be right or you're allowed to be wrong. So do you want to be right or do you want to be wrong? And that's how the ego interprets that. So the ego's not even listening to the question. The ego is just hearing, are you right or are you wrong? So at that point, when you ask a psychic a yes or no question, it activates the ego and the psychic stops being psychic. They start trying to be right because they don't want to be wrong. And so at that point, it activates the ego. They stop sensing things and they start fueling the ego process, and then they just start to guess and they go into a guessing mode and they're usually going to be wrong. That's why I always tell people, like, if you ask a psychic a yes or no question, you're probably going to get a bad answer because it activates the ego, and most psychics they've had to work through their own insecurities. And if you have someone who is not really good at that, they're immediately going to flop and it's just not going to work. So what I tell people is, instead of you being asked a yes or no question, ask a question that allows for an open-ended answer. So if someone says, are my partner and I going to work things out? I don't answer with yes or no. I ask myself a different version of that question. When do I see the relationship changing, or do I see any major changes in that relationship? And then what that allows is it allows my mind freedom to assemble pieces that don't fit within the structure of the egoic reaction. So it brings in pieces that may not even be a part of what that person's asking me, but it's still going to give me my answer. So if someone is saying, are me and my partner going to work it out? And I'm like, okay, well, let me see. Am I seeing any major changes with the relationship? And then I allow myself freedom to sense and to get into the detail of it. I start to sense a time frame. I start to sense a shift or a change. And then I also start to sense subtle variations after that. If I'm sensing like a change in the relationship at a certain date or time frame, and then I feel like there's nothing, then I can assume that they didn't stick it out and they probably aren't going to stay together. If I am feeling a little bit of nothing and then something again, then I would assume that it means that they're probably going to go through a back and forth period, or they're going to take a break, then they're going to try again, which would be my response. And so I don't say yes or no, you're not going to work. I may make that determination, but I usually describe what I'm getting first so the person knows what I'm sensing, and then I give them my assumption or my prediction or my answer. But I don't give myself the yes or no bit, because I'm setting myself up for failure in that case. And I'm much better at being a psychic if I give myself the freedom to sense whatever I'm going to sense, focusing in on the question without actually trying to give that person a yes or a solid no, because that's just going to set you up, and it triggers the ego. And even though I'm really good at keeping my ego at bay, I'm still human and I still have to deal with insecurity at times. And so I have to shut that ego down as quickly as possible, or it's going to get me into trouble. So this is just the way it is. That's just precognition. So Miss Rosemary's asking, hi Ferny, random question. When we dream and then experience what we dream in reality, what does that mean? It can mean two things. It's either precognition, which is basically you sensing the future, your own future, before it's happened and then actually having the experience, or it's deja vu. Now, here's the thing with deja vu, because people don't understand what deja vu is. Deja vu is basically the sense or the feeling of like you did something already, or you're repeating something that you just did, whether it's the day, the moment, etc. And what I have come to understand about deja vu is when we are in spirit form and we are planning out our life with our spirit guide, trying to figure out what we're going to include, what we're going to not include, what's going to be free form, we are programming into our life certain moments or experiences that are necessary for, and it's the reason why we're here, to get those experiences, because it helps our soul evolve. So then we come into life, we forget that whole process, we forget ourselves from spirit form, we start to become a version of us in physical form. We become a conditioned persona. We become Ferny, and then I'm doing whatever, and then I have a deja vu moment. Oh my God, I feel like I've done this before. Well, hell yeah, because I literally, like, not that long ago was sitting on my flat spirit ass and with my spirit guide working out the details of some of these experiences. So yeah, of course I'm going to have a moment where I like remember what I programmed in. And so that's what deja vu is. The thing about deja vu is a tricky thing because deja vu doesn't mean that something good is going to happen or something bad is going to happen. Deja vu just means that whatever you're experiencing is meant to be. Same thing with alignment. You can use alignment of numbers with the same thing as well. But like my partner, I think yesterday he had mentioned, he's like, oh my God, I'm having a deja vu moment. I'm like, oh, that's good for me because your deja vu moment automatically means that you're supposed to be having this experience, which means I'm supposed to be a part of that deja vu moment. So that means that I'm in alignment too. So I actually take it as a positive thing if someone close to me or around me is having a deja vu moment. Girl. Sanhane, random question. Do you know how you're going to die? I know a medium that says she does. Of course, because mediums, they showboat. They like to get on stage, well, wannabe mediums. Some people might know how they're going to pass away. The thing about it is a lot of people who think they know how they're going to pass away, usually it's based around their own fears, their own worries, or based around a past life experience. So if I have a lot of dreams of drowning, I could assume, oh, I think, I'm pretty sure I'm going to drown, and that's how I'm going to die. But that may just be based in a past life experience. That may have nothing to do with this lifetime. I have clients who are like, they are so afraid that they are going to die too young and not be around for their kids. And usually like 9 out of 10 times when that is happening, I'm sensing a past life with a client. I'm like, that's in a past life. You actually did die. You died of sepsis when you were giving childbirth and you weren't around for your 2 girls. So you're getting around the age of when that happened in that prior lifetime. It's bringing up all that energy and you're starting to associate with it. So you're having this fear and you're remembering some of these things and it's applying to your current life. So that's where some of it is. But usually it's not because the person's going to die that way. It's because they're remembering and having a past life trauma come up and they're grappling with that and assuming it's the current lifetime. But that's usually the case. But no, most people aren't going to know how they're going to die. Now, some people will say, I think I'm going to die young. And they'll tell you, I think I'm going to die young or I'm not going to live a long life. Well, yeah, because, if they're intending that, they're probably setting themselves up to align with an earlier death. But, like my friend Chelsea, she would always say, she didn't think she was going to get old and she ended up dying really young. But she didn't know she was going to die in a bicycle accident or get hit and run over. She didn't think that was going to happen. So most people are not going to know how they're going to die. So people who are like mediums and psychics, and you have to pay attention to these mediums and psychics because they're just attention whores and always trying to showboat, but look at their receipts, look at their track record, because people who claim to be psychics and mediums should have a track record. That's one of the things that I'm trying to change in the industry, which is why I'm excited to have the platform that I'm going to have with the show, the TV show, because on my site, I am posting and sharing all of my hits and misses. And even though I've got tons of clients, I have hundreds of people who have done positive reviews about my services and their experiences with me. Those are personal experiences, and they're not going into detail like, well, what did I get right, girl? Like, hey, you filled out the review. What did you get? What did I get? I want to know. But that doesn't help. But when you make public predictions and make public statements like that as a medium or a psychic, you better have enough of a track record or enough to back up what you're saying. And if I'm saying that I'm a psychic or a medium or I'm a prophet, where are my receipts? Where's my track record? Because you got a lot of psychics going around saying all that, but they don't have nothing to prove it. They don't have no track record. And a lot of psychics have a bad habit. A lot of shitty psychics have a bad habit of changing their words or changing what they said. And granted, I understand that because sometimes when you're thinking something and then you say it, you don't always vocalize every angle of what you're sensing. And then you miss some pieces that you wish you would have mentioned. Because I've been there myself. Like, damn it, I wish I would have mentioned that piece that I was thinking as well. I just didn't think it was that important. But I have a track record. I have a good track record. I have receipts. Go to my website. I have a dedicated page where I'm adding all of my predictions. And if I got it, I break it down. What did I say? What did actually happen? If I missed it, what did I say? What actually ended up happening? And I'm sharing both my hits and my misses. And a real authentic psychic should not be afraid of having missed a prediction, because all that means is that you're a human being and you're just like everybody else on the planet. You aren't going to get every single thing right or 100%, but you're doing a good job because look at all of these that you got right. Look at all of the ones, I just wrote a Dear Ferny about Nostradamus, because a lot of people are like obsessed with Nostradamus. Like Nostradamus is just the best. And I'm like, did you read about Nostradamus? Did you look into Nostradamus? Because he sucked. Like Nostradamus was a complete, like he sucked. He was a crappy, lazy psychic who didn't ever develop his abilities to a level where they were dependable and consistently correct. And he, in fact, was a crappy psychic. And I wrote an entire article on him. And I know a lot of people in the psychic industry or people who are in the spiritual community are not going to like that. But I'm like, I'm sorry. But if I have a friend and they call themselves a psychic and they put out 6,000 plus predictions, but here we are 500 years later, and the only ones that people can relate to or can say that he was right about are like 12, and out of those 12, only 3 of them are even closely specific enough that you could relate it to the event. That's not a good track record. I wouldn't pay that person for a reading. And so he wasn't as good as people want to think, but they think that because back then, he had the following of people in nobility. He had a lot of fans that were wealthy people and people who had power and stuff. And you got that kind of if you got those types of people backing you up, ain't nobody can look you up. Ain't nobody can look and see what you got right or wrong. They're just taking it based off of what the person's saying. Oh, if the queen of so-and-so is saying that you're an incredible prophet, you must be an incredible prophet. So it's true. No, it's not, because you haven't read his material. He ain't even published his prophecies yet. What are you talking about? So it gets a little bit ridiculous. So you have to hold people accountable to their own abilities. And the thing about it is, a person who really cares to be a good psychic, they're going to develop themselves and never stop pushing themselves in their ability. A person who's a lazy ass psychic who is not very good is going to stick to just the same basic bitch way of sensing things, and they're never going to push themselves. And when you call them out on it, they're going to get offended. And instead of using that anger and feeling embarrassed to push themselves to develop, they're instead going to just make you out to be the bad. You're wrong. You're darkness, and you're dark entity. Okay. All right. There was a woman in our neighborhood who she's just like a pill. And there's like on the Nextdoor or whatever, she start conversations on Nextdoor, the app, talking about, oh, this cloud in the sky. It's like, it's a ship. It's a ship by the aliens, by the Pleiadians. And there's some of us who are more practical, and there's a guy who does photography here who's also a star like photographer and stuff. And he just asked her a question, about it, like, okay, like, well, those clouds are known as, and he like broke it down to scientific terms and what those clouds are and how that happens. And she's like, no, that's a ship, and you're the devil, and you're evil, like totally coming for him. And I was like, oh no, I'm not about to let this half heifer, come down on him when he's just being basic, knowledgeable person giving her practical advice. And so I got in on it, and I was like, oh no, let me get on this. And I was like, sweetheart, I was like, do you have any pictures or any evidence to support your claim? Because you're saying these things, you're trying to come at him with it, but you don't have anything to back yourself up. You don't have any receipts. Oh, I know you. You're a dark entity, and you're covered in negativity. And I was like, you can say that because that helps you to feel better about yourself, and you're putting yourself in a soapbox as if you have a rational reason to be able to say that, and that you're justified in saying that. But it doesn't hold any water because I'm asking you to validate yourself. And I know in my line of work, if I don't validate myself, I don't have a job. So I have to validate myself and provide evidence. I need to see where you're getting the information that this is an actual ship. Were you able to take scans of it? Did you get any color? Did you get any reads with the temperature? Did you get any shots or pictures that are really questionable? Because I went to Sedona and I wanted to see a UFO, and I captured something on camera that looks like a UFO. I don't know for sure if it's a UFO. A hell of a lot looks like a UFO, but I don't know 100% if it is or not. But I feel pretty confident that it isn't, a normal craft, because it wasn't there 2 seconds before when I took the picture right before it. And I know damn well that planes don't travel that fast. So, what is your evidence, sweetheart? And so he's like, oh, you're just darkness. You're a dark entity. I'm like, okay, whatever. But at the end of the day, you're just going off on people. You're not substantiating what your claims are. And you are just putting yourself in a position where it's questionable. And it's not okay for you to go off on this person when they're actually giving you information that is validated by science. So I'm gonna need you to like bring that back to reality, sweetheart, because you ain't got this one. So, and it's hard because you have to call people out, and you have to make sure that people can hear that kind of information where it causes them to think about that. Well, yeah, well, maybe he's right. Well, maybe, you know what? He's got a point there. Like, like there was earlier today when I was on TikTok, I was watching a video. And it was a little clip, and it was this guy in a subway with a bunch of people, and he was going off on all these people. Jesus Christ, he loves you. He died for you, and Jesus this and Jesus that. And until you turn to Jesus, you're going to hell, and you have to turn to Jesus. Like going off on these people in the subway. And he believes that he is speaking from a place of love, or he's whatever. And so people are just not having it. And then one guy gets in and he's like, could you just shut the hell up? Like, no one here wants to hear what you have to say, and you're pushing your opinions and beliefs on everybody. Nobody wants that. So could you just shut the hell up? And he was like, no, I care about your soul. I want your soul to go to heaven, and blah, 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 and going on. So he went on this tangent, and this other woman is like, yeah, but nobody here is asking you to care about us. Nobody here cares about what you have to say. And he's like, but I'm purporting Jesus Christ's message and everything like that. And in my opinion, I was like, look, I would have said, look, Jesus was an incredible teacher, and he was very good at connecting with people and communicating his ideas, his teachings. And Jesus spent a lot of time trying to focus on talking to people and helping them through their issues, instead of talking about himself and telling them that they should believe in him and everything he purports. And he was more focused on just trying to focus on the message, focus on the teaching. And even in one moment, at one point, he was having lunch with the layperson, with people who, were contractors who did hard jobs and who were not considered to be holy or to be cleansed in their being. He was having just a little meal with some of them, talking to them, mingling amongst them, talking about his teachings and so forth. And a Pharisee comes along, and a Pharisee is like, it's kind of like their version of like a priest. So a Pharisee shows up and is like, hey, what are you doing associating with these people? What are you doing mixing with these people? They are not, and then they said they don't even cleanse their hands before they eat their meals. They don't even respect the Sabbath. They don't even do this. They don't even do that. And you know what Jesus said? He said, y'all need to mind your own goddamn business, because y'all do some shady things yourselves. Y'all don't question yourselves. Y'all require these people to go against the law that you purportedly represent to honor you instead of the law itself. So y'all do all kinds of shady things, and y'all need to mind your own business and go and take care of yours, because nobody here is asking you for advice. That was his response in very basic terms. And so in my opinion, I would say, he was a really good teacher, and Jesus always approached situations with love and with consideration and compassion when helping other people, except when he was checking someone. And the only time he checked people is when they opened their mouths and started to impose their opinions on the layperson, on everybody, trying to force them to acknowledge their opinions, their positions, their ideas. So in this situation, you are giving us the example of the Pharisees. You are a Pharisee. And in this situation, Jesus would be responding to you in this way, that it is none of your business what these people believe in. And in fact, you need to consider your own position, and you need to focus on your own life and your own business, because there's some shady things maybe going on there that you need to pay more attention to. Instead of wasting the energy in the subway telling everybody what they should do, you should use that 5 minutes, 10 minutes of that built up energy inside of you. You should use that energy. And there's a homeless shelter down the street, and they could really use someone to serve some food. Or there is a school down the street, and they have an after school program, and they're looking for big brothers. You would really help to bring these kids and to spend some time with them and give them a connection to another human being, because through that moment and connection, you exemplify Christ, and you show compassion and love, and you bring them to the divine. So that's the way you draw people to the teachings of a beloved one, not by imposing and yelling at them and going off on them. You better do this, or this is what's going to happen. Okay, then that's what's going to happen. That doesn't make me want to be your friend, or even like you, or even want to follow your message. In fact, you've just put me off away from Christianity. So you need to work on your messaging, because you are not paying attention to the teacher that you are trying to push. You're in fact doing the opposite of what he did. And so you're not even the best example of what he was doing here. You're the opposite. And you need to look at that, because at the end of the day, God's going to ask you, if you believe that you're going to end up at a pearly gates and Jesus is going to say, how many people were you able to convert? Oh, well, I was, I talked to people in the subway. Okay. But how many people were you able to convert? How many people were you able to bring into compassion, into love, into experiencing that angle? How many people were you able to bring that experience to? No answer, because that doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it's not the way, man. It's not the way. So work on the messaging, work on the way you're going to deliver that. Who inspires me? You know what? Sorry, I need to use proper sentence. Who inspires me the most? Oh gosh, I've had so many teachers in my life, and I don't have one person. You know what? I think a long time ago, I stopped thinking of people that way, where one person inspired me the most. Like, I don't have one person that inspires me. I have a lot of people that I'm inspired by, but there isn't one singular individual on this planet that I'm 100% like, that's it. That's the beyond. No, like, I don't know. Like, if I do that, then in the moment, I am slapping God in the face. If I put someone above me, I'm slapping God in the face, because what I'm saying is that I am not the same. I am not connection. We are not all one. And that's better than me, which means I'm below, which means I don't have value, which means that has more value, which means there's a difference between my value and worth in this existence and their value and worth in existence. And it's a slap in the face of God, because I exist. I'm here. And I have a right to have the same value as all other beings. And on top of that, I believe we all have the same value. I believe we are all worth something incredible. So I try not to prop people up above me, because it doesn't help me to achieve the mastership that I'm seeking to achieve. So I'm inspired by you. You're the one. You inspire me the most in this moment, because you gave me an opportunity to understand something and to express it and to share it with people. So in this moment, you inspire me the most. Okay? That'll be my answer. You don't have to open an aura to be spiritual. It doesn't. That's not the aura. The aura doesn't have anything to do with spirituality. The aura is a representation. It's like, how do we make the sun's light brighter to make the sun hotter? That's like the way you're asking the question. I was like, that doesn't work that way. So spirituality is not a pill that you take that suddenly you're going to be more spiritual and you're going to be lined up. No, spirituality is gained through the active engagement of understanding this reality and our experiences in it through the lens of source of God. In other words, I exist as Ferny and I exist as source or God. And I bounce back and forth between the two perspectives. And in bouncing back and forth between the two perspectives, I honor and acknowledge the experience of Ferny, but I also understand and I allow myself the expansion of perspective from source or God. And so in doing so, I give myself an opportunity to experience more, be more, feel more. And I don't allow the conditioning or the opinions or the social norms to control or to prevent me from having a direct contact with the universe, with source. So when you realize that you are definitely worth having a relationship with, and that you are having a relationship with God directly, you don't need anybody to be an intermediary, and then you give yourself permission to be the most authentic version of yourself, even if it means having to get through a balancing act to figure that out, then you're going to develop more spirituality. Because spirituality is not a title. It's not a state of existence. It's simply a process of experiencing things from the perspective of the one, of all, and then of the individual, and understanding that each has its place. Each has each has its place. That's what I say. Each has its place. No. Rhonda, do you ever replay messages from spirit to a stranger in public that didn't ask you? No. I think that when you watch movies and shows and stuff where you have like people like Teresa Caputo approaching people in public, like, it's so disrespectful. How would you like it if a doctor came up to you and said, "Hey, so I've been looking at your skin and it looks really, really messed up. So I'm going to tell you that," like, how would you like that? And I think that when it comes to being approached in the street, I want, first of all, if I'm out in public, I'm not necessarily looking to engage with people. So I don't really believe in doing that. I think it's just really disrespectful. And I'm not saying that there isn't a spirit or a message that needs to come through. I'm just saying my method, my way of doing it is I have an agreement with God that I'm not going to offer support or help to others unless I'm asked. Because I learned a long time ago that whenever I wasn't asked and I would offer it, I would get screwed in the process and the person would continue to perpetuate the status quo. So it served no one. So now when someone asks me, that means that they have done something to shift themselves enough to want to reach for an answer or to receive an experience, and they're open to it. So I'm all about permission slips and being open to it. I'm not about forcing or imposing my message on anybody. It's no different than the guy in the subway with Jesus. Some people are not, they're not looking for that. They're not even open to it. Why are you wasting your breath, your time? So I don't believe in that. In fact, I actually have a big issue with it myself, with people who do that. Yeah, so that's a good question, DJ Glowworm. Question, why does it seem like I have more psychic experiences when I'm tired or sick, deja vu, for example, or lucid dreaming? So here's the thing. Most of us are so focused on maintaining a level of life and experience that there's a automatic control that's a part of the process, meaning that all of us to some extent are control freaks with some aspects of our lives. And whenever we are sick, whenever we are tired, whenever we are under the influence in a very early stage of buzzing, whenever we're high on a very early stage of that, whenever we are in a state where we're not as focused on the mechanism of control, like when you go into I don't give a damn, like at this point I don't care, it's whatever. When you get to that state, you stop trying to control life, stop trying to control your experience of life. You stop trying to experience things in a chosen form, and you just surrender because you're tired or you're exhausted or you're just there. And what happens at that point is information starts to come through. Whatever's been there this whole time suddenly has the ability to have an effect on you, suddenly has the ability to get your attention, suddenly has the ability to be tapped into. So that is why I always tell people, like, you need to like drop the control, because people always get into this. This is the number one thing I learned in the very beginning when I tried to control the process of being psychic, and I only wanted to get right answers. I only wanted to get accurate answers. I only wanted to get specific information. I only wanted to look a certain way to people. I only wanted to be a certain way to people. When I realized that that was a part of the problem, and I just surrendered to the experience and gave in to the reality that I might be wrong or right. I might look like a fool in front of people. It's okay. When I surrendered to that and I gave myself over to the process, automatically it just flowed so much more effectively. And that's why when people when you're having more experiences, is because of that as well. Other times where people tend to be more psychic is when they're taking a shit, because they're not really focused on a physical activity at that point. It's all an automatic process, and the mind starts to be freed because it has a chance to focus on something else on top of what you're doing on the toilet. Washing dishes, people tend to like zone out when they're washing dishes. That's a time to be psychic. People driving cars, don't zone out when you're driving a vehicle, but it happens, right? Because you're in automatic, because you're keeping yourself engaged in something physical enough that it is using some element of control within the brain, but it isn't using all of it. And so at that point, it releases some of the control mechanism, and you can start to sense things when you're washing dishes, taking a shower, taking a shit, driving a vehicle, like some of those moments. And so that also is another reason. That's also another time when people tend to have more psychic experiences as well.